friends, welcome back to Englishwala. Today I am going to discuss one of the most important topics in English grammar, and it is second conditional. If I did that, I would, how would be the structure? If I were the Chief Minister of West Bengal, how would be the structure? All these are very confusing and very interesting. So, this lesson is a solution to these confusions. What is second conditional? How is the structure? When and how we should use? All these things are discussed in this video. So please lend me your eyes and ears along with your mind. Now, second conditional, when and why used? কখন ব্যবহার করব এবং কেন ব্যবহার করব? How it looks? What is the structure? Is structure কেমন? And the most important one is the extra tips given by me. And a lot of practice. Practice brings perfection. Practice brings perfection. And here, in this video, I am going to discuss second conditional. Let's begin from the beginning. Now, use the second conditional. When we should use the second conditional? To imagine life or situation is different. So, when we imagine life or situation is different, present situation is different. Present situation ta যখন different. To ask hypothetical questions, that means the imaginary questions, the imaginary situations, not the real ones. We can use second conditional to give advice, and we can use second conditional to give reasons why we cannot, why we don't, কেন করতে পারবো না, কেন আমি এটা দিতে পারবো না, তার explanation. So for all these reasons we can use second conditional. Now, the first point, to imagine life or situation is different. Things in the future that are unlikely to happen. Things in the future that are unlikely to happen. For example, if I won the lottery, it is not impossible, but it is unlikely. If I won the lottery, I would buy a house. Again, things that are impossible in the future. For example, if I were the Chief Minister of West Bengal, I would, perhaps, it is impossible. Or, if I were the designer of this planet, or if I design this planet, I would. Now, we use it to imagine or to dream that the present situation is different than it really is. আমরা কখন এটাকে ইউজ করব? যখন প্রেজেন্ট সিচুয়েশনটাকে আমরা ভেবে নেব যে প্রেজেন্ট সিচুয়েশনটা ডিফারেন্ট, অন্য একটা কোনো কিছুর কথা ভাবছি। যেমন, আমি যদি লটারি পেতাম, এর মানে হলো আমি লটারি পাইনি। তো একটা ইমাজিনারি সিচুয়েশন। এবং স্ট্রাকচারের দিক থেকে, if this happened, then that would happen. So what is the structure? You know that in conditional sentence there must be a conditional clause and a result clause. So the conditional clause is, if this happened, that would happen. That means if this happened, this is the condition. But it is in past indefinite or past simple. That would happen. And concrete example, if I had enough money, I would buy a car. If I had enough money, that means I do not have enough money. Imaginary situation, if I had enough money, I would buy a car. More other examples, if I had the time, I would chat with you. If he became rich, should marry him. If he became rich, that means he is not rich. If he became rich, so condition is if he became rich, should marry him. If I were you, I would break up with her. If I were you, that means I am not you. If I were you, আমি যদি তুমি হতাম, তার সাথে আমি break up করতাম. He would pass the exam if she studied properly. Here the condition clause is at the second position. He would pass the exam if she studied properly. It clearly indicates that she didn't study properly. If the weather wasn't so bad, we would go to the park. That means the weather was bad. The condition was the weather wasn't so bad. We would go to the park. Imaginary condition, imaginary result. If they weren't invited, would they go? If they weren't invited, would they go? Next one. To ask hypothetical questions. Hypothetical means not real, out and out imaginary. If you had to give up one of your favorite foods permanently, which food would you give up? That means you want not to give up any of your foods. But if that condition took place, that means if you had to give up one of your favorite foods permanently, which food would you give up? If you were a film producer, you are not a film producer. It is clear. If you were a film producer, which movie would you remake? If you could design a planet, what would your planet look like? So all these are imaginary situations, out and out imaginary, not the real ones. What laws would you abolish if you could? In the conditional clause, we can use could to mean was able or were able to do something. That means what laws would you abolish if you were able to do that? So in place of were able, we can use could. So in hypothetical questions, we can use the second conditional. Now to give advice, if I were you, I would accept the challenge. Suppose think about a situation. কেউ একজন আমার কাছে এলো, বললো আমি অনেকগুলো মানে হার্ডলস ফেস করতে হচ্ছে আমাকে, I have so many challenges, so what should I do? I wanted to give him a piece of advice, you should accept the challenge. But in a way, in a roundabout way, I say, if I were you, I would accept the challenge. That means if I were at your position. Now, if I were a singer like you, I would take up singing as my profession. My piece of advice is, you should take up singing as your profession. If I were at your place, I would not evade responsibilities. That means my advice is, don't evade responsibilities. If I were at your place, I wouldn't evade responsibilities. Now, look at one thing. Here we find where has been used after I, but generally the general rule is was should be used after I. I'll discuss this after a few minutes. Next one, give reasons why we can't do. Usually, you know that English people are polite while speaking to each other. They generally avoid saying no. In place of saying no, they, in a roundabout way, say that. And also gives the explanation behind that no. Think about a situation. Somebody came to me. Somebody came to me to borrow some money. I perhaps didn't have money, or I didn't want to give money. And I said to him, if I had the money, I would lend it to you. If I had the money, it clearly gives the reason that I don't have the money, and that is why I cannot give the money or I cannot lend it to you. So if I had the money, I would lend it to you. So the reason is given here, why I cannot lend you the money. If I had time enough, I would chat with you. I want to chat with you, but I cannot. What is the reason? Because I have no time. But if I had time enough, আমার যদি যথেষ্ট সময় থাকতো, I would chat with you. তাহলে আমি তোমার সাথে গল্প করতাম. Or my friends told me to give a party, to throw a party. I did not want to, because I took part in a competition, but I didn't get any prize. So the reason is, if I won the prize, I would throw a party. আমি যদি প্রাইজ জিততাম, তাহলে আমি পার্টি দিতাম. That means if that happened, then this should happen. If that happened, then this should happen. The same structure. Now, let us see how it looks. That means, what is the structure? In all the examples, you have seen that in the conditional clause, at first an if is used, and if is followed by the verb in the simple past form. So if plus past simple, and then in the result clause, would is used, and after would, the base form, the first form, or the infinitive form of the verb is used. So this is the basic structure of the second conditional sentences. If plus past simple in the conditional clause, and in the result clause, subject plus would plus infinitive form of the verb. If he lived in America, he would make American friends. যদি সে আমেরিকাতে থাকতো, তাহলে আমেরিকান বন্ধু সে পেত বা তৈরি করত. That means it is clear that he doesn't live in America. If he lived in America, he would make American friends. See the structure? The tense is used here, the modal used here. If I didn't have time, I would tell you. Again, in a conditional sentence, the conditional clause can be negative. If I didn't have time, আমার যদি সময় না থাকতো, I would tell you, তাহলে আমি তোমাকে বলতাম. That means I have time. If again, the result clause can be negative. If I had a car, I wouldn't ask for yours. আমার যদি গাড়ি থাকতো, তাহলে আমি তোমারটা চাইতাম না. The conditional clause can be negative. Again, both the clauses can be negative in the same sentence. If I didn't need money, I wouldn't ask for. If I did, আমার যদি টাকার প্রয়োজন না থাকতো, তাহলে আমি চাইতাম না. So, negative, the conditional clause can be negative, the result clause can be negative. Again, in a sentence, both the clauses can be negative. So this is the basic structure of second conditional. Now extra tips. Ready for it? Very interesting part. First of all, if is a conjunction. And you know that what is the function of a conjunction? A conjunction joins two ideas. Here also, if joins the condition and the result. If that happened, this would happen. Second, order of the clauses can be changed. That means in all the sentences we may not use the conditional clause in the beginning and then the result clause. We can just use the reverse structure. That means we can use the result clause at first and then the conditional clause. But there is a little bit of difference. There is no difference in meaning, only difference in structure, only difference in punctuation mark. Let us see a sentence. If he bought the TV, perhaps a TV company gave an offer. কোন একটা অফার দিয়েছে একটা টিভি কোম্পানি যে এই টিভিটা কিনলে একটা গিফট দেওয়া হবে। If he bought the TV, the conditional clause is in the beginning, conditional clause প্রথমে রয়েছে, and the result clause he would get a gift. And in the second sentence, he would get a gift, result clause প্রথমে ইউজ করা হয়েছে, if he bought the TV. Same sentences, same meaning. But the difference is here when the conditional clause is used in the beginning or conditional clause is used at first, we must use a comma, particularly in formal English. And in examination, you have to use that if, big if, that means if and only if the conditional clause is in the beginning, we must use a comma after the conditional clause. But if the conditional clause is at the second position, then we should not use the comma. But comma should be used, keep it in your mind, if the conditional clause is in the beginning. Otherwise, in examination, your marks will go down. Now, subject plus would are usually contracted when spoken. I repeat, when spoken. So, contractions should not be used in formal writings. In formal writings, contractions should be avoided. But in spoken language and in formal writings, you can use the contractions. Subject plus would. If you pronounce I would, rather it is easier if you say I'd, he'd, she'd, we'd, they'd, you'd. So you would. Instead of saying that, you can say you'd. But remember this, the contractions must not be, or rather must be avoided in formal writings. And the most important one, second conditional sometimes break the grammar rules. Wow! It does not follow the conventions. In the case of be verb, generally, grammar rule in connection to be verb is after I, he, she, it or any singular subject in past tense, was is used. But here, in place of was, where is used? Can't you use was? However, both the structures are correct. Both the usages are correct. Let us see. If I was he, I would set up a business. If I was he, I would set up a business. And I can write, if I were he, I would set up a business. Actually, where is more formal and more acceptable. I would prefer using where instead of was. If she was honest, she would leave the party. If she were honest, she would leave the party. And the second one, that is where, in place of was, in second conditional, should be used. It is a bit more formal and more acceptable. Now, let us practice. Let's think about the verb forms. Here, there are 10 sentences with 2 clauses in each sentence. One conditional clause and the other result clause. And if we use second conditional, think about using second conditional and use the proper forms of verb. Write in the comment box, pause the video, write down the proper forms of the verbs in the comment box. Now, I'll see the answers. If my lesson proves to be helpful to you, please subscribe to my channel for more videos on grammar and vocabulary. And if you like this lesson, please share it. Thank you.